Farmers today are facing rising costs, volatile markets, and extreme weather. The A Better Way to Farm podcast digs into strategies to help you take control of farm inputs and maximize profit so your farm can thrive for generations. Remember to take advantage of our free resources at abetterwaytofarm.com. Now, from America's Heartland, here's your host.
Hello and welcome to today's episode. I'm very excited to share on foliar feeding. It's going to be a great time together here. This is Rod at A Better Way to Farm, where we increase yields and improve profits. And we're excited to bring this information out and to talk to you guys and maybe give you some opportunities at the end here to go with. We are talking to more and more of you. I've had the opportunity just this morning to talk to 10 or 12 different growers about different things that they want to do to move and get faster, get better, doing what they're doing, and we're excited about that. Today, as we focus on this foliar feeding, we're going to talk about a step-by-step guide to getting the most out of your foliar feeding. So as we dive into this, we need to understand that foliar feeding is very important in today's modern ag practices. The days are past of saying, oh, that don't work or we don't know. And yeah, I know there's still people out there saying they ran a test and the foliar feeding didn't work. Well, if there's any place on earth where you have to embrace the 4 R's, it's here. You have to use the right product. You got to put it at the right place. You got to do it at the right time. You got to have the right pressures. There's a lot of R's in this deal that we have to get right. And a lot of people are trying to foliar feed a wrong product. They're trying to do it at the wrong time of day. They're trying to do it at the wrong stage of the plant. They're trying to do it at the wrong pressures. And we've got to make sure that if we're going to do this, we do it correctly. If we're going to lay the groundwork to be successful, it starts with a tissue test. We want to run through Midwest Labs, send those in there, and then fine-tune this on a field-by-field basis for what they need. Guys, I have a quote here I want to share with a friend of ours named Herb. He said that foliar feeding allows our crops to reach their full potential. It's one piece of the whole puzzle. It helps our farm make in-season amendments to allow crops to reach their full potential, and doing so has helped that plant achieve more photosynthesis, more chlorophyll, have wider leaves, and attain higher yields. And those are the results that we're looking for. That's the results that we're looking for you when we do this. It has been shown that foliar feeding is 20 times more effective than feeding the soil or broadcasting fertilizer. But what does that mean? It takes very small amounts to stimulate that activity in the leaf. We want to maximize the effectiveness, and we must consider field-specific factors when we're implementing our foliar feeding. That means what we're going to do in one field may not be what we're going to do in the next field. The success of this program comes from tailor-making the approaches to each specific field, crop, and crop requirements. When we address these unique needs, we get unique results, and that's what we're after. It is just powerful to come in and do this right. Now, foliar feeding, guys, is not a shotgun. When someone comes out and they say, we got this product, we think you should try some. You guys know my opinion of that. I hate the phrase try some. There's no science in that. What it really means is I need some commission and you ought to buy some of this. But the fact is, what do we want to do? We want to not try some, but we want to get really targeted. We want to know what those deficiencies or imbalances are within those plants, and then we can identify what nutrients we have to deliver through this foliar feeding process. And what that's going to do is let our crops receive the exact nutrient they need, no more and no less, and that's going to minimize waste and maximize efficiency. Guys, when someone comes out and they said, we've got Trio, Quadris, Quintet, Tennessee, Ernie Ford, Quad Pack, whatever it is, when they're telling you that they've got everything that you need in one jug for every acre, for every crop, I'm really suspicious. They have something that will probably get you some results most of the time. Why? Because the world knows that we're short on zinc and we're short on boron. The question is how much? And then are we also short on copper, manganese, magnesium, calcium? What are the other things that we need to put in there? And so we really want a targeted approach. And we're going to make that approach down to ounces per acre of the different nutrients. We want to make sure that we're getting that potential that we deserve. Guys, to understand the science behind this, we really have to know the anatomy of the leaves and how they absorb. And leaves, they are, obviously they have a vital role in photosynthesis. And those leaves possess structures that facilitate nutrient absorption, including both the stomata and the cuticle. And I'm not going to go into what those are, but guys, you're going to get the opportunity at the end here to lay your hands on a free ebook. All you're going to have to do is reach out to us, and Karen will get this book to you. and it's got an even deeper dive into this than what we're doing. But I just want to encourage you that getting this science down helps improve your profitability. Guys, here's another quote from a friend of mine named Brian. I just talked to Brian this morning. Tissue testing and foliar feeding are the pathway to success. I adjusted my nutrient ratios, and that was the key component to reaching my yield goals. And we go on and we talk more about the fact that that cuticle serves as a barrier for the fertilizer to penetrate into the plant. It's very small. It is the diameter measures less than 1 nanometer. To make sure we understand that, a nanometer is the equivalent to 1/billionth of a meter. That's a very small unit. So what we're looking at is a pore that the diameter of it is 1/billionth of a meter, and that's what we got to get this nutrient to pass through to get into the plant. As a matter of fact, I want you to think about this. The typical sheet of paper is about 100,000 nanometers thick. And so it's a very small hole that we're trying to put that into. Guys, as we look at these 4 R's, we do want the right product at the right rate, at the right place, at the right time. If we're going to see results, that's what it's going to take. So let's talk about the right product first. Typically, what we're going to look at there is a full, complete NPK of some kind, low rate, 1 or 2 gallons, with the micronutrients that are called for. Why NPK in addition to micros? Well, because we know that micronutrients go into the plant better in the presence of an NPK. And so we carry them in there. Guys, anything that we're going to foliar feed here before that R2 stage needs to be orthophosphate. We want to use a food-grade phos acid. We have to have a very low salt index. And we really recommend that we avoid foliar feeding anything that contains sulfur because of the risk of phytotoxicity. Do we have people that do it? Yes, we do. Do we like it? No, I do not. I want to encourage you, don't use the 215-19-3 or the 816-11-2, but get after that 318-18 is our favorite product for that. Once we get to VT to R2, we have a 26% nitrogen product. That is a triazone nitrogen, has a wetting agent built in and some boron already there. And that's a great way to give a push right there at the end as we get into that R2 stage. After we've figured out the right fertilizer to use, now we want to start looking at the secondaries and the micros. And the only way to do that is by coming in and doing the tissue test. We're looking for products that are 100% chelated, and I'm not going to get into all of that right now, but I think I'll be doing something in the near future on why we like EDTA chelation, because there is another group out there that's got some other ideas, and I'm not going to dive into that today. But I think once we get the opportunity to share that with you, you're going to enjoy it very much and realize what you can do to bust up your success and just make it flourish. You know, a chelate, in layman's term, is just a protective claw that keeps each ion from tying up with another ion. We want to make sure that those go into the plant, that zinc or manganese or whatever it is go into the plant. They don't get tied up with phosphorus, but they actually release once they're in there. And then the EDTA, which is an acetate, releases that nutrient. And the acetate is there also to do some things for the plant. But the important thing is we're getting that secondary or micro into that plant. The only exception to that is that boron is not chelated. Our boron is complexed, which is a different process of building it. But just say this, it contains something that actually makes it translocate in the plant better. Boron is not a good translocator once inside a plant. It moves a lot in the soil, doesn't move much in the plant. And we've put something in there to actually help with that to increase your success. While we're on the process of foliar feeding, we encourage you to take a look at exploring the sweet tooth of your plants. I know some of you guys have probably had a sugar rush once before. What happens here is sugar plays an important role in the plant's defense system. It helps with photosynthesis. It helps with plant health. We did a live on A Better Way to Farm on Facebook, and I think it's in a podcast form also on sugar with research done by universities. One particular set of research that was done coming out of the University of Nebraska at Lincoln was excellent. And they literally talked about the fact that them and some people from the USDA had seen sugar help the defense system of plants to actually make the defense system stronger. And I'll let you draw your own conclusions as to what that means, as to what it does, but we just know that it works. We also find that this is a good time if we can find the right plant growth regulator. And guys, not all of them are the right one. We got to use the right product at the right time. We got to say, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to make a bigger leaf? So when do we want to put that on? Are we trying to make a bigger fruit set? When do we need to put that on? Do we want the plant to get taller? For instance, sometimes here in Iowa and farther south, we have a plant growth regulator, and I encourage people not to use it on soybeans. Why? Because it has a propensity to make the beans get really tall. So we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, and we've studied the science on it so that we get it correct. We also can use foliar feeding on those soybeans as they enter the bloom stage in an attempt to hang on to more of those blooms. And, typically it's not uncommon for 60 to 75% of all the flowers produced on a soybean plant to abort. Many of those flowers that aborted have already been pollinated and fertilized, but they grow at a slower rate and eventually cannot compete with the bigger, older flowers. Research has shown there is a direct correlation between indigenous levels of cytokinins and flower abortion. This ultimately influences pod set. So over a 3-year testing period, independent testing has showed a $13.84 per acre return on investment when using our cytokinin product. Guys, I think that's worth looking at to hang on to those flowers and get more pods, get more beans. It's also important, guys, if we're going to be successful in foliar feeding, that we have a surfactant in there, and not just any surfactant works. We need a very special surfactant that will increase that fertilizer, those nutrients going into that plant, and we have a product there that is absolutely second to none. I would encourage you to take a look at that. And again, all of this has gone into in more depth. When you get into the ebook, you're going to have the opportunity to really explore this stuff more. And you can print it off, you can study it, you can put it in a binder and carry it with you if you want. But whatever it is, you're going to have the opportunity to underline it, highlight it, and figure out what we want to do to become more successful. Foliar feeding at the right time. And guys, I could spend a day talking about this. But the right time really has nothing to do with the clock. Typically, when I think of time, I think of clock, right? Well, here, when we're talking about timing, I'm thinking about two different kinds of time. Number one, I'm thinking about the growth stage of the plant. Is it the right time? Is it the right growth stage to come in and foliar feed that plant? Secondly, I'm thinking about the thermometer. The thermometer is my clock when I'm foliar feeding. So let's jump into the first one. When do we like to foliar feed the first shot? V3 to V5, whether it be corn or soybeans. That's what we're looking at. I have a good friend who's a multi-time national yield champ, and he aims to foliar feed all of his crops. He feeds everything the first time because he knows it pays big dividends. And then he'll come back and feed about 50%, his best 50%. And let's talk about that for a second. Guys, sometimes people, when you use foliar feeding, think that they're going to help the weak. And oftentimes, especially in America, we think the best thing we can do is really come out here and tear down the successful and help the weak. And I'm all for helping everybody. However, when we're talking about crops and it's a percentage of increase, do I want to foliar feed corn that's going to make 100 bushel and get 10% on that? Or do I want to foliar feed corn that's going to make 275 and get 10% on that? Foliar feed your best acres. So our good friend, he foliar feeds everything the first time because he knows the value. And then he comes back on the second pass at V8 and he hits the best 50% again. And then he comes back at R2 and he hits the best 50% of that, or 1/4 of his acres, the third time. He's pushing his best fields, and you don't know what those are until you get there. So you just keep looking and watching and walking the fields. But he knows it pays big dividends. We really recommend that tissue test at V2 to make sure we're ready to go at V3 and get that on there. And that's the best way to do it. As we take a look at this right time, guys, these stages are critical. We would never advise to be in that field doing anything at V6 and V7 in corn in particular. We find opportunity to cut yield. And guys, foliar feeding done wrong will decrease your yield. There's no question about that. You do it at the wrong time of day when it's hot. You do it at the wrong stage of the plant. You use the wrong product. It's not uncommon to see a yield decrease. We'd like to avoid that. My favorite quote from my wife is, "Experience is what you get when you get what you didn't want." And she goes on to say that wisdom is using someone else's experience. So guys, let the 30 years that we've done studying this, let us share with you what we did wrong so that you don't duplicate those mistakes and you can just be profitable as you do this. So the first time, again, that we were talking about was the stage of the plant. V3 is the first window on corn or beans. Second time that I want to talk about is the thermometer. Why is that? because we are not going to foliar feed when that temperature gets to 86 or above. When the temperature hits 86, go golf, go fish, go mow your yard, take your wife out to eat. I don't care what you do, but don't foliar feed. That's a really high-risk move. The best you can hope for is no results, and reality says you could get some negative results. And at the end of the day, when you come back in the evening, this is obviously something we tend to do in the morning or later in the evening. If you're doing it in the evening, you have to have a 10-degree drop. In other words, it gets to 86, you quit, but the temperature only went up to 91. What does that mean? That means you can't start foliar feeding that night until the temperature falls back to 81 degrees. I need a 10-degree drop from the high temperature in order to go back out there and start foliar feeding. Your second window, your second time from the plant is V8 to V12. As we look at that, we get a significant response when we do that. Again, we're going to tissue test at V7. That's what we're going to be doing at V6 or V7. And then that third window is at R2, especially in corn. That corn is really screaming, and using that 26% nitrogen with that boron in there will stimulate root growth, and that will help us take up more nutrients. It will help us take up more moisture. It'll help us with test weight, and it will help overall profitability. Guys, it is really important, again, to get that right product. For instance, at V3, we would avoid any heavy nitrogen products, even our own 26%, built to foliar feed, but would not use it at V3. We prefer that 318-18 or a 918-9. These products provide the necessary NPK macros that are essential for foliar feeding. They also facilitate that uptake, getting those micros and secondaries into the plant. Guys, there's one other thing here. This tip is probably worth a significant amount of money for you, significant amount. And it is this. When you foliar feed, you have to select pure products. They have to be free from detectable heavy metals. Heavy metals have been shown to disrupt DNA, hinder plant development. And guys, the fact of the matter is we don't want to put anything in there that slows us down or hurts us. We want to be going forward, and we want to be going forward fast. And while you may find some fertilizers that are lower in metals, often companies are selling micronutrients that have a lot of lead, cadmium, arsenic, mercury. There are a lot of different things in there. And when you're doing this, it's important that you read the labels or have the test and make sure the heavy metals are non-existent. That's a key component of using the right product. Again, from the timing standpoint, time of day, the clock has very little to do with it. I just want to reiterate, it is the thermometer. The thermometer is your best friend for figuring out what you're going to do in regards to being successful with this. Guys, rate is really important. This is the last R, and I'm going to close out here with this. We want to see high pressure. I talked to a gentleman this morning, and he was questioning what we were going to do here, and he said that he'd been spraying, at 50 pounds. That's fine, but we would like to see 65 pounds minimum pressure. We want to atomize this. We want it to be a mist. It's why I don't like a weed and feed for foliar feeding. If I'm doing the right thing to foliar feed, I've got driftable fines. If I'm doing the right thing to spray chemical, I've got big droplets and they're falling straight to the ground. If I'm spraying chemical, I'm probably using a higher rate of water. If I'm spraying nutrients, I want a low rate. I'm happy to foliar feed. A lot of our guys will put on that 26% nitrogen and put it on simply with an airplane and use nothing. No water, no carrier at all. That's it, just the nitrogen. We have guys who maybe their ground rig, they have to put on 2 gallon of fertilizer and their micros and then add some water, and they're putting on 5 gallon total or 8 gallon total. Guys, once we cross over 10, we are no longer foliar feeding. We are just broadcast spraying. What does that mean? It means that there is not going to be that electromagnetic charge, that the nutrients are not going to be drawn into the plant, and a lot of that is going to hit the dirt. We are not trying to let it hit the dirt. Our goal is to get it into the plant. And so it's really important to make sure that we have this total solution really at 8 gallons or under. That's how we're going to be the most effective. When we cross that threshold, we cross over diminishing returns in terms of cost effectiveness. We don't want to waste our time. We don't want to waste our money. We just want to maintain proper solution requirements to ensure that foliar feeding covers the leaf. If the fertilizer rate is too high, then the risk of burn occurs. That's why we get people who are new to this game and they think, well, if 2 gallons good, 5 gallon must be fantastic. 2 gallon is good and 5 gallon is a train wreck, because what we're going to do is we're going to hurt ourselves and burn leaves. Guys, foliar feeding is not hard to do. However, it is a detailed, oriented process. And the profit doing it is in the precision. It's about doing it correctly. Guys, I hope that you found value in this. If you would like this ebook, go to Facebook, type in A Better Way to Farm, send us a message there, and Karen will see to it that you get a copy of this free ebook, no charge to you. You'll just let her know, and she will send it to you. There's a ton of good information. If you find value in what we do, give us a rating. We would sincerely appreciate that. I know Rick called me or texted me last week and said, hey, man, I'm living in the tractor and I'm out of podcasts. When are you going to send another podcast out? And I smiled and said, every Monday, buddy, every Monday. And so we're going to do that, continue to drop these podcasts for you. I hope you're finding great value, but share them with a friend. Give us a rating. Go find us on TikTok. Go find us at A Better Way to Farm on Facebook. That's where you can message us the easiest. That's what we would prefer. We would look forward to hearing from you. You can also go by abetterwaytofarm.com and take a look at the profit calculator. Guys, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I hope this finds you doing well. I hope you're almost done planting by the time you hear this, or you are completely done. So therefore, if we're about done or are done, it's time to figure out how to foliar feed. Let's get to it. We appreciate you guys listening. And as always, we hope you're having a better day.
You're listening on the Verbal Crowd Network. Find more great shows at verbalcrowd.com.